So let's say the Assad regime just goes. It's over. That's it. Be careful what you praise and be careful how you celebrate that. There have been incidents, particularly in Libya of late, where a dictator goes and what follows isn't exactly to our liking. Former UN spokesman Ric Grenell on that. Rick, what do you think of that? And obviously the administration seems to be coalescing around this idea. Get rid of this guy. He does more harm than good. But of course, we know in recent history, sometimes the devil you don't know is worse than the one you do. What do you think?
Yeah, let's remember, though, shortly after the United States had a credible threat of military action because it came true in Afghanistan and Iraq, we saw the Libyan leader give up his chemical weapons. He decided on his own, voluntarily, to call the United States and say, hey, I better give these up because I just watched what happened. And my point is that there's a difference between a threat of military action and a credible threat of military action. These strikes were designed to change the calculus of not only Assad, but change the calculus of Russia and Iran. And so I think that they're looking now at Donald Trump and they're saying, this is a credible threat of military action. We got to come back to the table and figure out what is our policy. Make no mistake, Russia absolutely does not want to be in Syria forever. They have been looking for ways to kind of dial this back. Of course, no moral argument works with them. We're not going to be able to say you just got to do the right thing and follow the international community. We're going to have to be much more muscular in our diplomacy and bring in some economic incentives and some other incentives in order to get Russia to back away from Assad. The second that Russia backs away from Assad, then that means Donald Trump's strikes worked, the calculus has been changed, and we will probably see somebody like Assad step down voluntarily and begin to move out.
All right, now that depends on the Russians kind of forcing that hand or his hand to do something, and they don't want to be embarrassed on the global stage. So how do they avoid that? They've already promised if we were to do something like we did last week with the Tomahawk missiles, they would respond. Now, we're not sure what that response would be, but the Syrian government has done everything but use chemical weapons against since last week, but certainly horrific attacks since that seem to indicate that they're willing to do just everything but. Then what?
Well, look, I think this is where muscular diplomacy has to take hold. We should be so active in the Middle East, not only with the Saudis and the Turks, but really the Egyptians and the Jordanians. If we could have a united front, which I saw in Italy, the Turks participated, and they came to kind of pump up, if you will, Rex Tillerson right before he went to Russia. I think that there is a united front that Russia's got to dial this back. If we all can begin, again, not moral arguments with the Russians, because those moral arguments do not work, but if we can all pressure them with other kinds of incentives so that they can save face. I think you're exactly right. They are looking to make sure that this is not a PR disaster for them. So if we can help them find that way to dial back, and they've already started, remember, that they said their support for Assad is not unconditional. So I think that we have an opening with diplomacy here to begin to pressure Russia to back off. This meeting on Friday in Moscow between the Syrians and the Iranians and the Russians is incredibly important. And hopefully what will happen is that Rex Tillerson can meet with Sergei Lavrov tomorrow, Russian time, right before that meeting with Putin and the Iranians and the Syrians, and really dial them back. And maybe we'll see some progress from that meeting. That's what we're hoping.
What if Putin keeps true to his word and doesn't even bother seeing Tillerson while he's in Moscow? What would we read into that?
Well, I think that it's not great, but I don't think it's the end of the world. Lavrov is quite important there.
Okay. Rick, thank you very, very much. Good seeing you again. Ric Grenell, the former UN spokesperson.